This is Christopher John Bjerknes. It is January 24th, 2024. I have an incredible new theory that I want to share with you that is going to revolutionize Shakespearean scholarship and serves as a perfect case study for the dual seed line theory of Judaism, which states that Gentiles are the offspring of Satan through his sexual relationship with Eve in the Garden of Eden that produced the widow's son Cain, who is the progenitor of all Gentiles according to the oral traditions of Judaism. Jews themselves are said to be the descendants of Adam and Eve, who produced their son Seth, who then became the father of all of Jewish people. So in the oral traditions of Judaism, they have this dual seed line theory that Gentiles are the descendants of Satan and Jews are the descendants of God through Adam and Eve. And Gentiles have kind of a dual nature because they're half Eve and half Satan, according to this mythology. So this takes place in Shakespeare's play, Romeo and Juliet, the very title of which identifies it as a story of the Judaic dual seed line theory. The name Romeo represents Roman and Rome and Edom. His last name is Montague, as in Mount Seir of Edom and the seven hills of Rome, which also identifies him with the Edomite descendants of Cain, of the serpent, Samael, the devil. Juliet, the name, it starts off with Jew in the English pronunciation, and it would begin in Hebrew with the letter Yod, which symbolizes Judah, Jacob, and the name Juliet means Jove's child. The chief god of the Romans is Jove, and the Romans would have pronounced it Yove, as in Yahweh. So Juliet is identified as Jove's child, meaning not the child of the Roman god Jove, but the child of the God of Israel, Yahweh. Juliet symbolizes Eve in the Garden of Eden. The balcony scene in the play, the most famous scene in the play, takes place in what is called the orchard, signifying the Garden of Eden. Romeo is the serpent Samael who woos Juliet. Juliet's last name is Capulet, taken from Dante's Purgatorio, Canto 6, line 106, where Dante uses the name Capuletti, but it refers to the kippa, the cap, the yarmulke, which Jewish people wear. So this identifies these two warring families. These families are at war. They are at war because the Montagues bear the serpent's curse, which in Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, I believe, curses the descendants of Samael through Cain, in other words, the Gentiles, to be at war with the children of Eve through Adam. One will crush the serpent's head and the other will bite the heel. And this curse takes the form of Esau and Jacob, the twins, fighting in the womb. Esau is the reincarnation of Cain. Jacob is the reincarnation of Seth. So we have this continual war between these two seed lines, the Montagues of Mount Seir versus the Capulets, the Jews wearing their kippas. And this war produces the curse of death. Romeo and Juliet, representing Samael and Eve, are cursed to death, and they produce the widow's son, Cain. So what Shakespeare was doing in this play was retelling the Kabbalistic and oral tradition mythology of Samael's love affair with Eve. And this is presented in a very Zoharite format in which the moon and the sun curse these star-crossed lovers. We have the moon and the sun on opposite sides of the earth, and the earth is eclipsing the light of the sun from the moon. And that is what Shakespeare was intimating in his cryptic message, that these are star-crossed lovers. The dull earth is in the middle and casts its shadow, the shadow of Samael, on the moon, such that the moon is black and does not receive the divine light. The Zohar states that in this period, the moon, who is the goddess Shekinah, the female aspect of the Godhead, is in darkness and is vulnerable to the seduction of Samael, who approaches her at this period of the new moon. And Eve is symbolic as a representation of Shekinah. She is the child of the parents, the divine Godhead, Yahweh, Shekinah, and the male aspect of the Godhead. In fact, the name of the Godhead, Yahweh, Jove, is spelled Yod-He Vav-He. Eve is spelled Chet-Vav-He. The Het is simply one variation of the letter He, such that the Godhead name is in its male aspect the letter Yod, and then Eve's name, He, Vav, He. And that represents both Shekinah, and Eve. And that duality permeates the balcony scene in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, as I'm going to prove to you in just a moment. But I want to give you a little background of where I'm going with this and how it serves as such a good case study for all of my theories about this genocidal dual seed line theory in the oral traditions of Judaism, which portray Gentiles as the offspring of Satan and Jews as the literal offspring of God, and that these two people are cursed to be at war with one another, and the parents are only satisfied when they kill each other, which is what the prophecies of Judaism call for. So what Shakespeare's intentions were in revealing all this is a subject for another day. I certainly have a theory about it, but I'm not going to touch upon that today. But I will lay out, utilizing the balcony scene, the most famous scene in the play, to illustrate the fact that the story of Romeo Montague is the story of Samael, represented by the Romans, by Edom, by Mount Seir, versus the Juliet Capulet, Juliet being Yahweh's child, Jove's child, and representing the Capulets, the Jews who wear caps on their heads. So let's start digging into the play. It's really amazing once you know that key that unlocks what all these phrases, which have been misunderstood by Shakespeare's scholars from the very beginning, actually mean in this play, and how they exactly portray the Zohar's portrayal of Samael's romance with the new moon, his romance with Eve, and how that produced the evil seed line, according to the oral traditions of Judaism, of the Gentiles, who must be exterminated in an absolute, complete genocide. The Bible is filled with curses against the Edomites, saying that they must be obliterated, completely obliterated. Not one of this satanic seed line is to be left alive. And this is portrayed as the war between the Capulets and the Montagues. So let's Let's watch the prologue. Even in the very prologue, this narrative is laid out that this is going to be the story of the Gentiles and the Jews at war with one another that began with Samael seducing Eve in the Garden of Eden and injecting his satanic seed into Eve to produce the Gentiles through their child, Cain. The next child that was born was not born of Samael, of Satan and Eve. Instead, it was born of Adam and Eve, who are both the child of the sun and the moon, Yahweh and Shekinah, Tiferet and Yesod. And Abel was born next. Abel still had traces, according to Kabbalah, Abel still had traces of Samael's blood, which is why Samael committed the first human sacrifice and offered Abel up to the gods as his meat sacrificial offering to the gods. And then Seth was born of Adam and Eve, and that impurity had diminished to become far less important in Seth. And then Seth becomes the father of the Jewish people, whereas Samael, Satan, Romeo, is the progenitor of the Gentiles. And you're going to see that in the prologue.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers.
So what we're seeing here is these star-crossed lovers. They are star-crossed because the sun is kept from the light, the moon is kept from the light of the sun by the dull earth in the middle. And that represents Samael eclipsing the light of the sun to seduce Yahweh's wife, Shekinah, during the new moon. She's most vulnerable because Samael has blocked out the light of the male aspect, and the female aspect is about to be seduced and taken by Samael. And this is the identical story of Eve and the serpent in the garden, where the serpent seduces Eve. This is all a symbolic representation of the earth, of Samael, the demon around the earth, blocking out the sun's light and preventing the union of the sun and the moon, the completion of the androgynous Godhead, and intercepting the moon, the blackness, the darkness, Eve in the form of Juliet, to seduce her, to produce the child Cain. And the way that Judaism prescribes to prevent this is to offer Samael a scapegoat at that time, so that he is confused and does not make love to Yahweh's wife, Shekinah. And so let's proceed.
Others take their life, whose misadventured, piteous overthrows do with their death bury their parents' strife.
Burying their parents' strife. That is what happens to the curse on the serpent and the curse on Eve. They're both cursed to death. And the Freemasons refer to Gentiles, and especially Freemasons, as the widow's sons, the descendants of Cain, because Cain's father, the serpent, is cursed to death.
Fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end, naught could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage.
So the play is going to be about this war between Jews and Gentiles. The Gentiles are represented by the Montagues of Mount Seir, by Romeo, the Roman, the Rome, who could also portray Jesus, and by Juliet, who is the Jewish princess, Shekinah, the moon, in this story. And she appears in the orchard, which is the Garden of Eden. And there are numerous references to the fruit trees in the orchard and the moonlight. And the moon signifies Yahweh's bride, Shekinah, his female aspect. And Samael comes along and messes with the relationship between Shekinah and Yahweh, both directly with Shekinah during the new moon and with Shekinah's image, Eve, who is created in the image of Shekinah. Adam is created in the image of the male aspect of the Elohim, as the Yod in Yod He Vav He. He Vav He is Chet Vav He, Eve. So Shakespeare very cleverly incorporates all of this Zoharite mythology into his play, just as the Greeks, whom Shakespeare often copied, would incorporate their legends of their gods and their heroic figures into their plays as human beings, to convey these stories which would explain the entire mythology of the pantheon of their gods in these plays. That's exactly what Shakespeare is doing. He's explaining the mythology of Kabbalah, especially of the Zohar, of the phases of the moon, which are also going to be discussed, as you'll see, and of the fact that the earth eclipses the sun relative to the moon, and that this creates all of these problems, which are only resolved through the death of the serpent and the death of the Eve. In other words, the destruction of humanity.
Can I go forward when my heart is here? Turn back, dull earth, and find thy center out. Romeo!
Turn back, dull earth, and find thy center out. Romeo here is being portrayed as the evil realm of the earth, eclipsing the light, the holy light of the sun, blocking it from the moon, such that the moon is in shadow, in Samael's shadow, as the Zohar says, so that the moon is now being made love to by the earth instead of the sun. So that in this orchard, in this Garden of Eden, where Romeo, Samael, is going to seduce Juliet, Eve, to create the child Cain, this is also mirrored in the Zohar by Samael, Romeo, making love to Shekinah on the new moon, and the need to prevent that by offering up the scapegoat, by offering up goats in the phase of each new moon.
My cousin, Romeo! Romeo!
He's wise, and on my life hath stolen him home to bed.
He ran this way and left the orchard wall.
When he calls Romeo wise, he is identifying Romeo as the wise serpent. The serpent is called wise by Jesus. The serpent is the cunning as described, or the wisdom as described in Genesis chapter 3. So this is one of the tells, the clues that Shakespeare is giving you, that Romeo is the devil, is the serpent in the Garden of Eden. The other clue is that he is ascending the orchard walls to enter into the Garden of Eden, to climb up the balcony on either vines or a tree representing the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He hangs in that tree as the serpent seducing Eve.
cold, good Mercutio.
Oh, nay, I'll conjure too. Romeo! Humours! Madman! Passion! Lover! Appear thou in the likeness of a sigh. Speak but one rhyme, and I am satisfied. Cry, but I me. Pronounce but...
Love and dove represents the Holy Spirit in the Bible, the Holy Ghost, which is the Queen of Heaven, Asherah, which is Shekinah, the dove who hovers over the waters, the dove who baptizes Jesus, who is the reincarnation of Samael through Cain, through Esau. And then the story of Eve fornicating with the serpent is retold as Mary being impregnated by the incubus and succubus, Samael and Lilith. So this reference to love and dove is the serpent, Samael, trying to seduce Shekinah in the form of Eve.
Love and dove. Speak to my gossip Venus one fair word. One nickname for her purblind son and heir, young Abram Cupid.
Venus represents Lilith. There was a statue of Venus de Milo, which appears in Rome, which is to be copulated with by Samael again to produce Armilus. So these are again Kabbalistic images being slipped into Shakespeare's play. Abraham, Cupid, the identification of Cupid with Abraham, all of this is coded Kabbalah.
That shot so trim when King Cophetua loved the beggar maid. Ah, he heareth not, he stirreth not, he moveth not. The ape is dead, and I must conjure him. I conjure thee by Rosalind's bright eye, by her high forehead and her scarlet lip, by her fine foot, straight leg, and quivering thigh, and the demeans that there adjacent lie, that in thy likeness thou appear to...
And if he hear thee, thou wilt anger him.
Now, this cannot anger him. 'Twould again to raise a spirit in his mistress' circle of some strange nature, letting it there stand till she had laid it and conjured it down. That was some spite. My invocation is but fair and honest. In his mistress' name I conjure only but to raise up him.
Come. He hath hidden.
So we have Romeo appearing among the trees in the orchard as the serpent in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He is being conjured. That conjuring is done by the eclipse of the moon, by the dull earth, which intervenes between the sun and the moon. And when you see the black shadow on the moon, you are looking at Samael, according to the Zohar.
Himself among the trees to be consorted with the humorous night. Blind is his love, and best befits the dark.
If love be blind, love cannot hit the mark. Now will he sit under a medlar tree and wish his mistress.
The medlar tree is a play on words. There was a tree in England that was popular for its fruit, especially in the winter, called the medlar tree. And that relates also to the open arse that Eve is referred to. And all of these are images of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. And the fact that Samael, Satan, the serpent, Romeo is going to appear in that tree and is going to attempt to seduce Eve, who is a representation of Shekinah on the new moon when it's completely black and in Samael's shadow, because Samael is making love to Eve and blocking out the light of her authentic husband, Yahweh.
Just with that kind of fruit that maids call medlars when they laugh alone. Oh, Romeo, that you were
Oh, that she were.
Open arse refers to that fruit on the meddler's tree. A meddler is someone who meddles in the affairs of others, and Samael is appearing as the meddler who is interfering with Yahweh's wife, Shekhinah.
An open arse, and thou a poppering pear. Romeo, good night. I'll to my truckle bed. This field bed is too cold for me to sleep. Come, shall we go?
Go then.
Shekinah and Yahweh are to make love in the bedchamber of the temple, since that cannot take place because the temple was destroyed and Shekinah shunned Yahweh in favor of Samael. She is now the lover of Samael. This is all portraying the fact that they are going to meet in the orchard because the temple has been destroyed.
For 'tis in vain to seek him here that means not to be found. He jests at scars that never felt a wound. So, what light through yonder window breaks?
We're now getting into the idea that Shekinah, Eve, Juliet, is self-illuminating as the moon originally was, but she is in darkness because Samael, the dull earth, has eclipsed her male half, the sun. And that's what he means by what light through yonder window breaks.
It is the east, and Juliet is the sun.
The sun rises in the east, and when the androgynous form of the Godhead is complete, the sun is in the full moon. The moon is in the full moon and is illuminated by the sun. That is when Shekinah and Yahweh have been recombined after Samael has been removed from between the moon and the sun, the male and the female aspect of the Godhead, the two eyes of the Godhead, as Samael Romeo is going to describe.
Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she.
The maid of the moon is Shekinah. The maid of the moon is Eve, Juliet, because she is created in the image of the Elohim as the female aspect of the Godhead. She is Chet Vav He in Yod He Vav He. So once again, Samael Romeo is revealing the fact that Juliet represents Eve, and Eve signifies the moon as the female aspect of the Godhead.
Not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fool.
Her vestal livery, as in the Vestal Virgins, Eve and Shekinah are often portrayed as the virgin due to their correspondence to Egyptian and Greek and Roman virginal gods. Samael is seducing this virgin to produce the child Cain, just as Samael seduces Rebekah in the form of the camel and to produce Esau, and just as Samael seduces the virgin Mary to produce the child Jesus. This is the lineage of Samael, Cain, Esau, and Jesus, and this is being portrayed in Shakespeare's play in this cryptic way in terms of these references to the sun and the moon and the maiden of the moon. The maiden of the moon is Eve, created in the image of the moon goddess Shekinah.
do wear it, cast.
Oh, I also wanted to point out that that livery is green because, as the Talmud says, it is surrounded by the darkness of chaos, which is the color green.
It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that her eye discourses? I will answer it. I am too bold, as not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in...
The two fairest stars in the heaven are the sun and the moon. He is describing the fact that the moon is pining for the sun, that Shekinah wants Yahweh, wants to make love to Yahweh in the temple. Instead, she is trapped on the earth, representing the Garden of Eden in the form of Eve, of Juliet, and she is about to be seduced by Samael in the form of Romeo Montague. And so Romeo is setting it up so that he can take the place of the sun and be her lover to produce the child Cain, which produces the Montagues representing the Gentiles. And she will later unite with the son in the form of Adam to produce the Jewish people through Seth.
All the heaven having some business to entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in...
So this is how that's revealed as the lamp being shamed by the sun, Samael being shamed by the sunlight. So her cheek representing the surface of the moon, which reflects the daylight or is in blackness when Samael, the earth, covers the light of the sun and prevents the moon from being illuminated by her lover. And instead, she makes love to the darkness of the earth and her cheek becomes dark.
Heaven would through the airy regions stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek.
This is again representing Samael, the black pig in the heaven, who casts his shadows on the cheek of the moon as the glove that blocks out the light of the sun, as the dull earth that turns the cheek black to show that Samael has seduced Eve, Shekinah, the moon, and is making love to her.
Ah, me.
She speaks. Oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night being on my head, as is a winged messenger of heaven unto the white upturned wondering eyes of mortals that fall back to gaze on him when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air.
Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name.
Samael, the serpent's father, is Satan. This is portrayed by Jesus having as his father Satan and being the spirit of Satan incorporated into himself. We see the moon pining now for the earth, for Romeo to come and make love to her, to produce their offspring, the Gentiles, Cain, Esau, and Jesus.
Or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more? Shall I speak at this?
It's but thy name that...
So she is saying that she wants to shun being Jewish and being a Capulet with the kippah, and instead unite with Samael to produce Cain, to produce the Gentiles, to produce the Montagues.
And I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more? Shall I speak at this?
Is but thy name that is my enemy? Thou art thyself, though not a Montague. What's Montague is no hand, no foot, no arm, no face, no any other part belonging to a man who be some other name.
She is here identifying the fact that Samael is a serpent, that Samael is the devil, Samael is the tempter.
What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself.
I take thee at thy word. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized.
Jesus is baptized and baptizes in the Holy Spirit. So this is the baptism of Jesus, the serpent Samael, and he is seducing the moon, Shekinah, Eve in the form of Juliet.
Henceforth I never will be Romeo.
What man art thou that thus bescreened in night so stumblest on my counsel?
By a name I know not how to tell thee who I am.
This is also invoking the concept that Satan, Samael, has to take on a human form, and he does that by impregnating Eve, by impregnating Shekinah, by impregnating Rachel, and impregnating the Virgin Mary. So this is a necessary process to create the Gentiles as part of the rectification of the corruption of the world.
My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word.
Mine ears have not yet drunk 100 words of thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound. Art thou not Romeo and a Montague?
Neither, fair maid, if either thee dislike.
How camest thou hither? Tell me, and wherefore? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place...
Here she's identifying the fact that they are in the Garden of Eden, the orchard with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil with its forbidden fruit, and the tree of life, and that if God catches Samael in this tree, tempting Eve to consume the forbidden fruit, God will curse and kill the devil for doing that, as happens in the serpent's curse in chapter 3. And that's what Shakespeare is presenting.
Tell me, and wherefore? The orchard walls are high and hard to climb, and the place death, considering who thou art, if any of my kinsmen find thee here.
With love's light wings did I approach these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out, and what love can do, that dares love attempt.
This also, again, portrays the earth eclipsing the sun and casting its shadow upon the moon that's overtaking the orchard walls, and Samael becoming the lover of Shekinah and the lover of Eve and Rachel and the Virgin Mary.
Therefore thy kinsmen are no stop to me.
If they do see thee, they will murder thee.
Alack, there lies more peril in thine eye than 20 of their swords.
This also represents the fact that Eve, the female aspect of Adam, was created in the image of her parents, Shekinah and Yahweh, and that Shekinah and Yahweh have the power to kill Samael and the power to kill the Gentiles, and the Gentiles are condemned to death at the hands of the God of Israel throughout the Old Testament, throughout the Midrash, Kabbalah, and Talmud.
Look thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity.
I would not for the world they saw thee here.
I have night's cloak to hide me from their eyes. And but thou love me, let them find me here. My life were better ended by their hate than death prorogued wanting of thy love.
By whose direction foundst thou out this place?
By love that first did prompt me to inquire. He lent me counsel and...
You see the serpent ascending the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to seduce Eve and to tempt Eve in the form of Juliet.
I lent him eyes. I am no pilot, yet wert thou as far as that vast shore washed with the farthest sea, I should adventure for such merchandise.
Thou knowest the mask of night is...
The mask of darkness is on her face again because this is the new moon, the time that, according to the Zohar, Samael seduces Shekhinah and takes the place of the male aspect of the Godhead, the sun, to fornicate with Shekhinah, which is again the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, producing evil Cain, who always makes war and hates the Jewish people, and the Jewish people, oh, bless them, they're obliged to exterminate the Gentiles so that Esau can't win his campaign of hate, which is based upon the fact that Jacob has stolen his birthright and blessings.
On my face, else would a maiden blush repaint my cheek for that which thou hast heard me speak tonight. Fain would I dwell in form, fain deny what I have spoke, but farewell compliment. Dost thou love me? I know thou wilt say aye, and I will take thy word. Yet if thou swearest, thou mayest prove false. But lovers' perjuries, they say, Jove laugh.
Jove is Yahweh. The name Juliet means Jove's child. Jove, pronounced by the Romans, would be Yahweh, Yahweh. So this is again portraying the fact that Eve, that Juliet, represents the children of Yahweh, represents the Jewish people, the Capulets with their kippah, and that Samael is trying to do what Ezra and the other Jews of the Old Testament so feared, and that is to seduce a Jewish woman and create the mixed multitude and inject the seed of the serpent into the Jewish people, which is the thing they hate the most, which is the pretext that they give for needing to exterminate the Gentiles, the evil inclination, the Sitra Achra, the Kelipot, so that this evil can never be infused into the Jewish people. And this is being portrayed quite vividly in Shakespeare's play as the serpent who has climbed up the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to seduce Eve and inject his evil seed of the evil inclination into Jewish blood, but he only succeeds in creating Cain and the Montagues, the Edomites, the Romans, the Gentiles, and Eve later cleanses that through Abel and Seth.
Oh, gentle Romeo.
I think I forgot to mention, but in Psalms, in Psalm 2:4, 37:12-13, and 59:8, it talks about God laughing, and that's a cryptic reference that Shakespeare slipped in there to Jove, Yahweh, laughing.
If thou dost love, pronounce it faithfully. Or if thou thinkst I am too quickly won, I'll frown and be perverse and say thee nay, so thou wilt woo. But else not for the world. In truth, fair Montague, I am too fond, and therefore thou mayest think my behaviour light. But trust me, gentlemen, I'll prove more true than those have more cunning to be strange. I should have been more...
Again, the cunning is a reference to the cunning of the serpent in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, as Romeo is. And it represents the wisdom of chaos and the cunning of the serpent that even Jesus Christ made reference to.
Strange, I must confess, but that thou overheardst I was where my true love passion. Therefore pardon me, and not impute this yielding to light love, which the dark night hath so discovered.
Lady, by yonder blessed moon I vow, that tips with silver all these fruit tree tops.
The moon is Shekinah. The moonlight is silver light as opposed to the golden daylight. All the rites and rituals of Judaism call for silver, not gold. Redemption is through silver temple shekels. All of this is very cryptic references to the fact that Romeo is trying to seduce Shekinah on the new moon, that this is the Garden of Eden. The treetops are the tops of the trees of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, and they are being cast in the silver of the moonlight of Shekinah.
Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon that monthly changes in her circled orb.
So Eve is saying, don't swear by Shekinah. Don't swear by the Elohim, because you are the devil. You are better than the devil. The devil is variable because the earth eclipses the sun and creates both the new moon, and then by getting out of the way, the full moon. The Zohar talks about how this whole cycle in the world to come, Olam Haba, will end, and all of this variableness will be broken because the Gentiles will be exterminated, and there will no longer be a natural childbirth. The lunar cycle is tied to the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle is considered a curse upon Eve for sleeping with the devil, Samael, the serpent. Childbirth is portrayed as if a curse put upon evil Eve, the evil left-hand side of the Tetragrammaton. Remember that Yahweh in Hebrew is written right to left, whereas other languages are written left to right, so that Yod He Vav He, Eve's name, is on the left, and the Yod of the male aspect is on the right. And women left, the left-hand side of the Sephirotic tree, Eve's name in the Tetragrammaton, all of that is portrayed as evil. It is tied to the wisdom and the cunning of the serpent, and the fact that the moon is forced to make love to Samael on the new moon instead of being with her natural lover, the sun, is portrayed in the Zohar. It's something that will end at the end of the cycle of the 6 days of creation, and then it will no longer be variable. And we have Juliet being created in the image of the moon, saying that she doesn't want to be a part of this variableness, and being seduced by Samael to reject the daylight of Yahweh.
Lest that thy love prove likewise variable.
What shall I swear by?
Well, do not swear. Or if thou wilt, swear by thy gracious self, which is the God of my idolatry, and I'll believe thee.
If my
There we have absolute proof that Romeo is Samael, the devil, up in his tree in the Garden of Eden, in the orchard, because she said that he, Romeo, Rome, Edom, Mount Seir, Montague, is the god of her idolatry. The god of her idolatry is Samael. So Shakespeare is explicitly stating in this line that Romeo is Samael seducing Eve in the Garden of Eden.
thy gracious self, which is the god of my idolatry, and I'll believe thee.
If my heart's dear love...
No, well, do not swear. Although I joy in thee, I have no joy in this contract tonight. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden. Too like the lightning which doth cease to be ere one can say it lightens. Sweet good.
Again, this relates to the variability of the phases of the lunar cycle and the idea that Shekinah is being seduced by Samael, but ultimately, in the end, when the temple is rebuilt, they won't have to make love in the orchard. The male aspect of the Godhead and the female aspect of the Godhead will once again make love in their bedchamber in the temple and be recombined into their androgynous state. And Samael will be left out of the love affair, the menage a trois that's taking place in this Romeo and Juliet story of the Zohar's phases of the moon of Samael seducing Shekinah on the new moon.
Night. This bud of love by summer's ripening breath may prove a beauteous flower when next we meet. Good night. Good night. A sweet repose and rest come to thy heart as that within my breast.
Oh, wilt thou leave me so unsatisfied?
What satisfaction canst thou have tonight?
The exchange of thy love's faithful vow for mine.
I gave thee mine.
Shakespeare has the scapegoat killed as Romeo's friend is killed. The two goats are offered up by Romeo's friend, and then one of the Capulets being killed. All of this prevents Romeo from culminating his lust for Shekinah, so that Romeo doesn't make love to Juliet. He is thwarted in his attempts to seduce Juliet by the offering of the scapegoat, which confuses him. There is also the temple offering of the Jewish expiation goat. So all of this also mirrors what the Zohar says about the Yom Kippur ritual of the expiation goats. And poor old Samael doesn't get to culminate his love for Eve, for Jewish Juliet, the child of Jove, the child of Yoveh.
Before thou didst request it, and yet I would it were to give again.
Wouldst thou with joy? For what purpose, love?
But to be frank, and give it thee again. And yet I wish but for the thing I have. My bounty is as boundless as the sea. My love is deep. The more I give to thee, the more I have.
Shekinah is the goddess who floats over the seas. She is Asherah. She is the Holy Spirit that is always hovering over the water. So that's being replicated in these lines given to Juliet.
For both are infinite. I hear some noise within, dear love, adieu. Anon, good nurse. Sweet Montague, be true. Stay but little, I will come again.
Oh, blessed, blessed night. I am afeard being in night, all this is but a dream, too flattering sweet to be substantial.
3 words, dear Romeo, and good night indeed. If that thy bent of love be honourable, thy purpose marriage, send me word tomorrow, by one that I'll procure to come to thee, where and what time thou wilt perform the rite. And all my fortunes at thy foot I'll lay and follow thee, my lord, throughout the world. I come anon, but if thou mean'st not well, I do beseech thee. By and by I come, to cease thy strife and leave me to my...
those of you familiar with Scripture will recall that God comes looking, the Elohim, the gods, Shekinah, and both the male and female aspect of Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, come looking and calling for Adam and Eve. And this is being portrayed in this garden scene by Juliet's nurse, Enan.
Grief. Tomorrow will I send?
So thrive my soul.
1,000 times good night.
1,000 times the worse to want thy light.
We see the serpent slithering down the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and he's going to be cursed, and he's going to lose his legs. And in Zohar mythology and other, in the oral tradition, he's initially a camel, and he gets his legs cut off and becomes a snake, cursed to crawl on his belly. And this is cryptically portrayed in the modern age by the walrus, whose tusks are like fangs. The walrus crawls on its belly. It is a sea version of the camel as the Leviathan.
Love goes towards love as schoolboys from their books. But love from love towards school with heavy looks.
Stromio. Oh, for a falconer's voice to lure this tassel gentle back again. Bondage is hoarse and
Tassel is a reference to the blue tassel in the prayer shawl, which represents the blue robe of Shekinah.
may not speak aloud, else would I tear the cave where echo lies and make her airy tongue more hoarse than mine with repetition of my Romeo.
It is my soul that calls upon my name. How silver sweet sound lovers' tongues by night, like softest music.
Again, the silver is a reference to the light of the moon as opposed to the golden light of the sun.
To attending years.
Romeo.
Aeneas,
What clock tomorrow shall I send to thee?
by the hour of 9.
I will not fail. 'Tis 20 years till then. I forgot why I did call thee back.
Let me stand here till thou remember it.
I shall forget to have thee still stand there, remembering how I love thy company.
And I'll still stay to have thee still forget, forgetting any other home but this.
'Tis almost morning, I would have thee gone, and yet no farther than a wanton's bird that lets it hop a little from his hand like a poor prisoner in whose twisted gyves and with a silken thread plucks it back again. So loving jealous of his liberty.
I would I were thy bird.
Sweet, so would I. Yet I should kill thee with much cherishing. Good night. Good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow.
Sleep dwell upon thine eyes, peace in thy breast. Would I were sleep and peace, so sweet to rest.
This is all acting out the fact that the moon and the phases of the moon, the new moon and the full moon, go back and forth, and the love affair between Shekinah and Samael is cyclical and follows this pattern, and they reemerge and reemerge. And many of the rituals in Judaism are devoted toward warding off Samael in the devil in this period of the new moon, when the new moon is black the sun of daylight is kept from the moon by the dull earth, which is in between the star-crossed lovers. And all of this is meant to depict that and how this struggle has to end in the end, and the Godhead has to be reunited into an androgynous form where the sun and the moon are coupled instead of the moon and Samael and the sun with the devil's female aspect, Lilith.
The grey-eyed moon smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light. And darkness fleckled like a drunkard reels from fourth day's pathway made by Titan's wheels. Hence will I to my ghostly friar's close cell, his help to crave and my dear hap to tell.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's my theory that the story of Romeo and Juliet is in fact portraying the love affair between Samael and Eve, which produces the Gentiles, the Montagues, the Mount Seir Roman Edomites, Romeo the Roman, and the fact that this union produced Cain and also produced the curse of death. Both Romeo and Eve are cursed to die. Friar Lawrence and all that, I have it all worked out. I have the whole theory set in stone. Maybe someday I'll write a book about it. But this is my theory that Shakespeare was a Kabbalist, and he gave his Kabbalistic messages in code, and that code is portrayed in Romeo and Juliet, very much like the Greeks telling the story of the gods and the heroes and all of the Greek legends in plays. And Shakespeare was following in that tradition, and his audience was completely unaware of the fact that he was portraying Kabbalah to them. And a big part of Kabbalah is this dual seed line theory that we all have to be wary of, because it curses all of humanity to death. It is based on the mythology that Samael seduced Eve in the Garden of Eden from that tree that Romeo climbed, and implanted in her his seed into Cain, who became the father of all of the Goyim, the 70 nations of Gentiles, and that these 70 nations bear this evil seed and have to be completely and utterly exterminated so that not a single one is left alive. So although I've revolutionized Shakespearean scholarship, I think what's even more important than that is this as a case study to enlighten people as to the danger that we are all placed in by this mythology of Judaism, that Samael seduced Eve in the Garden of Eden, produced Gentiles. Gentiles bear this hatred of the Montagues for the Capulets, and the Capulets bear their hatred towards the Montagues, and that there has to be this perpetual war between Jewish people and Gentiles, which is completely artificial, which is based on the most nonsensical, ridiculous mythologies that mankind has ever created, and which condemn us all to death. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank my contributors very, very much. Thank you so much, Carolus and Norbert, and my new contributors. Once again, I have neglected to incorporate the slide with all of your names. I apologize. There's just too much floating in my head to get this all together. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching. If you would like to contribute to my work, you can do so at my website, cjbbooks.com. You'll find all of my books there. Beneath each book title are contribution links. At the bottom of the page, you'll find my social media accounts linked. You'll see all my video channels. Please subscribe to all of those. In case I lose some of them, you'll be able to find me on the others. Thank you for watching. I will see you all next time. Bye for now.